I never thought my life would change at an art show, of all places. But that's where I met him. Jackson Reed, the man who would eventually tear my world apart. My name is Avery, and I own Thompson Hughes, an art supplies company I built from scratch. That night, I was showcasing our new line of professional-grade aerosol paints at the Manhattan Art Exhibition. Everything was going perfectly. My booth was drawing attention, sales were strong, and I felt on top of the world. "These colors are extraordinary," a deep voice said behind me. "The pigment saturation is unlike anything I've seen." I turned around and there he was, tall, dressed in black, with paint-stained fingers and intense brown eyes that seemed to look right through me. I recognized him immediately from art magazines and gallery openings. Jackson Reed, the rising star of the New York art scene. "Thank you," I managed, trying to keep my voice steady. "We've spent 2 years perfecting the formula." He picked up one of the display cans, turning it in his hands. "You're the owner, right? I've heard about your company." "Guilty as charged." I smiled, watching him examine the can with genuine interest. "Would you like to try them?" Without waiting for an answer, I pulled out a test canvas. He took the paint and started working immediately, his movements confident and precise. A small crowd gathered to watch him create a stunning abstract piece right there at my booth. "This is incredible," he said, stepping back from his work. "Have dinner with me tonight. I want to hear more about your process." My stomach did a little flip. "I can't. I need to pack up the booth and—" "I'll help you pack," he offered, already reaching for a box. "Come on, when was the last time you did something spontaneous?" I thought about my son Max at home with the sitter, my morning meetings, all the responsible reasons to say no. But something in Jackson's smile made me want to be reckless. Just this once. "Okay," I heard myself say. One dinner. That's how it started, with paint fumes, a chance meeting, and a decision that would set everything in motion. If I'd known then what Jackson Reed was really capable of, I would have run in the opposite direction. But sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who make you feel completely safe. "Perfect," he said, writing down an address. "Meet me at 8. And Avery." He paused, that magnetic smile returning. "Wear something colorful. It suits you." I had no idea I was walking straight into his carefully painted trap. That first dinner with Jackson turned into a whirlwind romance that left me breathless. Within 6 months, we were planning our wedding, and I was house hunting for what I thought would be our perfect family home. My son Max seemed to adore him, and everything felt like it was falling perfectly into place. "I still think you're moving too fast," Mia said over coffee one morning, her forehead creased with worry. "You barely know him." I stirred my latte, watching the foam swirl. "When you know, you know. You should see how great he is with Max." "That's what worries me," she replied, leaning forward. "He's almost too perfect. Like he's playing a role." I brushed off her concerns, but something about her words stuck with me. Maybe that's why I decided to surprise Jackson with a gift, a way to prove to myself and everyone else that this was real. The Ferrari sat in our driveway, a bright red bow on its hood. I'd spent weeks arranging it, making sure it matched the exact shade of red he always used in his paintings. When Jackson pulled up in his old car, his reaction wasn't quite what I expected. "This is—" He trailed off, circling the car. "Avery, this is too much." "Nothing's too much for you," I said, holding out the keys. "You deserve this." He grabbed me in a tight hug, but something felt off. His enthusiasm seemed forced, like he was putting on a show. "You're incredible," he whispered, but his eyes were fixed on the car, not me. Later that night, I overheard him on the phone in his studio. "Yeah, she bought it. No, trust me, everything's going according to plan. The wedding's in 3 months." My stomach dropped, but I convinced myself I was being paranoid. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. When I tried to discuss wedding details the next day, he seemed distracted. "About the house," he said, changing the subject. "I think we should put it in both our names. For tax purposes." "But I'm paying for it," I replied, watching his reaction carefully. "It's from my company's profits." His smile tightened slightly. "We're going to be married, Avery. What's yours is mine, right?" I nodded, but something in his tone made me shiver. That night, I lay awake wondering if Mia was right. Was I seeing the real Jackson, or just the masterpiece he wanted me to see? The next morning, I found a draft email on his laptop, left open by accident. Once the papers are signed, we'll have access to everything. Just be patient. I closed the laptop, my hands shaking, but like a fool in love, I chose to ignore the warning signs. After all, artists are complicated, right? I had no idea I was about to become his greatest masterpiece of deception. The first red flag I couldn't ignore came 3 weeks before our wedding. Jackson burst into my office at Thompson Hughes, his usual composed demeanor replaced with frantic energy. "I need your help," he said, pacing. "There's this installation I've been planning. It could be my masterpiece, but I'm short on funds." I looked up from my quarterly reports. "How short?" "200,000. He stopped pacing, running his fingers through his hair. "The gallery wants it in 2 weeks, and my accounts are tied up in other investments." My chest tightened. "That's a lot of money, Jackson. Maybe we should discuss this after. Don't you believe in me?" His voice took on that wounded tone that always made me feel guilty. This could be huge for us. For our future. Later that day, I overheard him in the hallway. "Yeah, she'll transfer it tomorrow. No, she has no idea about the others. Look, just keep your mouth shut about Monaco." I pretended to be busy with my phone when he came back in. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Perfect," he smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Just gallery business." That night, I couldn't sleep. I got up to check on Max and found him in his room, drawing. "What's that, sweetie?" "It's Jackson's secret friend," he said innocently, showing me a crayon drawing of a woman with long blonde hair. "The one who visits his studio when you're at work." My world tilted sideways. "What secret friend?" "The pretty lady. She brings him coffee and they talk really quiet." Max returned to his drawing. "Jackson said it's a surprise for you." I felt sick but forced a smile. "That's nice, honey. Time for bed." The next morning, I transferred the money. But I also hired a private investigator, just to prove my suspicions wrong, I told myself. When the PI's first report came in, I almost threw up. "Mrs. Thompson," he said, "your fiancé has done this before. 3 times in the last 5 years. Wealthy women, quick marriages, substantial financial loans for art projects. Then he disappears with the money." I sat there numb as he showed me the evidence. Photos, bank statements, newspaper clippings of other whirlwind romances that ended in financial disaster. My phone buzzed, a text from Jackson. "Thanks for believing in me, beautiful. This piece will change everything." He was right about that, but not in the way he thought. I looked at the transfer receipt on my desk, then at Max's drawing pinned to my wall. The pretty blonde woman smiled back at me in crayon strokes, mocking my willful blindness. I picked up my phone and called Mia. "Remember when you said he was too perfect?" I should have listened. I spent hours preparing for Jackson's birthday dinner at Le Cirque. Max had made him a special card, and I'd arranged for the chef to create a custom dessert featuring edible paint splatters, a cute nod to how we met. I wanted everything to be perfect, even with my growing suspicions. I arrived early, smoothing my dress as I waited at our usual table. The maitre d' approached with an uncomfortable expression. "Mrs. Thompson, your husband called. He's already here, but requested a table for 2 in the private dining room." My stomach dropped. There must be some mistake. We always sit. That's when I saw them through the glass partition. Jackson and a young blonde woman, the one from Max's drawing, sitting intimately close, his hand on hers. She was wearing my grandmother's sapphire ring, the one Jackson had claimed he was getting resized last week. I walked toward their table, my heels clicking against the marble floor like a countdown. Jackson saw me first, his face shifting from surprise to cold calculation in an instant. "Avery," he said smoothly, standing. "You're early. I was just about to call you." The blonde looked between us, realization dawning on her face. "Jackson? What's going on?" "What's going on," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "is that this man is my fiancé, and we're supposed to be celebrating his birthday. With my son who made you this." I dropped Max's card on the table. Actually, Jackson reached into his jacket, pulling out an envelope. "I was going to do this more privately. But since you're here." He slid the envelope across the table. "Divorce papers. Already filled out." We're not even married yet, I whispered. Oh, we are. His smile turned cruel. Remember that quick ceremony in Monaco last month? For the art permit? It was real. And according to these papers, I'm entitled to half of everything, including Thompson Hughes. The blonde, Chloe, according to the papers, had the decency to look horrified. You said you were divorced, she stammered, pulling off my grandmother's ring. Keep it, I said, my voice hollow. It suits you better than it ever suited me. I turned to leave, but Jackson caught my arm. Don't make this difficult, Avery. You're a smart businesswoman. Sign the papers and we can all move on. I looked at his hand on my arm, then at his face, the face I'd trusted, loved, planned a future with. You're right about one thing, Jackson. I am a smart businesswoman. I pulled away. And you just made the biggest mistake of your career. Walking out of that restaurant, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about heartbreak anymore. This was war. I found something interesting, Hank said, sliding a manila folder across my kitchen table. 3 days had passed since the restaurant disaster, and I hadn't slept more than a few hours each night. Mia leaned forward, her coffee forgotten. How bad? Bad enough to put him away, Hank replied. Those paintings he's famous for? They're not his. My hands shook as I opened the folder. Inside were surveillance photos of Jackson meeting with a young artist in a rundown studio in Brooklyn. The timestamps showed regular visits over the past 2 years. His name is Ryan Mercer, Hank continued. He's the real talent. Jackson's been buying his work for pennies, then passing it off as his own. The kid's desperate and scared. Jackson's got something on him. That's why he needed the $200,000, I whispered, pieces clicking into place. He was buying Ryan's silence. Mia grabbed my arm. Avery, this is perfect. We can expose him. It's not enough, I cut her off, remembering Jackson's smug face at the restaurant. He'll spin it, claim he was mentoring Ryan or funding unknown artists. We need more. My phone buzzed, a text from Jackson. Lawyers tomorrow. 2 p.m. Don't be late, darling. There's something else, Hank said quietly. Those other women he married? One of them disappeared. Monica Winters. Right after she threatened to expose him. The room went silent. Mia's face paled. Avery, maybe we should just let him have what he wants. If he's capable of. No. I stood up, pacing. He's not taking my company. He's not taking anything else from me or anyone else. I turned to Hank. Find Ryan. Tell him I want to meet. You're playing with fire, Mia warned. Jackson's dangerous. I walked to Max's room, watching him sleep peacefully. On his wall hung the crayon drawing that had first revealed Jackson's betrayal. Next to it was a new drawing, a monster with Jackson's face, surrounded by angry red scribbles. I'm already burned, I said, turning back to them. But I'm not the only one. Monica Ryan, how many others has he destroyed? Someone needs to stop him. My phone buzzed again. A photo from Jackson, him and Chloe in my house, in my bed, with the caption, "Moving in tomorrow. Hope you've cleared your things out." I showed them the photo. Mia swore under her breath. Hank started making notes. But I felt strangely calm. Because now I knew this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about justice. And I had nothing left to lose. Find me everything, I told Hank. Every lie, every victim, every secret. It's time to show the world who Jackson Reed really is. The green light of the television studio felt suffocating as I sat across from Diana Wells, the host of Art World Exposed. My hands were steady, but my heart hammered against my ribs. In the front row, Mia gave me an encouraging nod. So, Avery, Diana leaned forward, you're claiming that Jackson Reed, one of our most celebrated contemporary artists, is a fraud? I opened the folder in my lap. I'm not claiming anything. I have proof. The studio screens lit up with surveillance photos, bank statements, and correspondence between Jackson and Ryan. The audience gasped as I methodically laid out the evidence of Jackson's deception. And what about Monica Winters? Diana asked. My mouth went dry. She disappeared after threatening to expose him. The police never. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Max says hi. He's enjoying his surprise playdate with Uncle Jackson. The blood drained from my face. I hadn't dropped Max at school today. My mother had. Mrs. Thompson, Diana prompted. About Monica Winters? Another text. Shame about your mother's fall down the stairs. Hospitals can be so dangerous. My voice cracked. The studio lights seemed to blur. Are you all right? Diana touched my arm. I stood abruptly, the microphone clattering to the floor. I need to go. My son. Running away? Jackson's voice boomed from the back of the studio. He strolled down the aisle, Chloe at his side, both immaculately dressed. Please continue your story. It's fascinating. Where's Max? I demanded. He smiled that perfect, practiced smile. Safe. For now. But maybe we should discuss this privately. The cameras were still rolling. The audience watched in confused silence. Everything I'd planned, all the evidence I'd gathered. None of it mattered if Max was in danger. Ladies and gentlemen, Jackson addressed the crowd. My wife is unwell. The stress of our separation has led to some unfortunate delusions. I'm not delusional, I said, but my voice shook. Tell them about Ryan. Tell them about Monica. Ryan. Jackson laughed. My protege? He'll be happy to tell you himself how I've mentored him. He gestured to the wings, where Ryan emerged, looking pale and defeated. Tell them, I pleaded with Ryan. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Jackson has always been generous with his guidance. I'm grateful for his support. The audience murmured sympathetically, not for me, but for Jackson. I watched my chance at justice crumble as he masterfully turned the tables. My phone buzzed one last time. Choose wisely, darling. Your son or your revenge. I grabbed my purse and ran from the studio, leaving behind the evidence, the cameras, and any hope of exposing Jackson's lies. In trying to destroy him, I'd given him exactly what he wanted, public sympathy and an even bigger spotlight. But he'd made one crucial mistake. He'd threatened my son, and that was going to be his last mistake ever. I found Ryan at his dingy studio in Brooklyn, surrounded by half-finished canvases that screamed Jackson's signature style. Only now I knew better. I'm sorry, he said before I could speak. He has photos. Evidence that could destroy my career before it begins. He's already destroying your career, I replied, picking up a stunning piece hidden behind stacks of others. By stealing it. Ryan's shoulders slumped. You don't understand. He owns me. My phone rang Jackson. I put it on speaker. Darling, your little TV stunt backfired beautifully, he purred. My latest piece just sold for triple the usual price. Scandal sells, sweetheart. Where's Max? Safe with Chloe. She's quite good with children, actually. Better than you, perhaps. Ryan's head snapped up at Jackson's voice, his face darkening. He grabbed a blank canvas, quickly sketching something. What do you want? I asked, watching Ryan work. Everything, Jackson laughed. The company, the house, your reputation. I always get what I want, Avery. You should know that by now. Ryan held up his sketch, a familiar scene. Jackson's studio, but from an angle I'd never seen. Behind a false wall, stacks of paintings, documents, and a laptop. You're right, I said carefully. You always win. Why don't we meet? Sign the papers. Make it official. Finally seeing reason? Perfect. The gallery, 1 hour. Bring the divorce papers. I ended the call, staring at Ryan's sketch. That hidden room, what's on the laptop? Everything, Ryan whispered. His real accounts, emails to Monica before she disappeared, videos of him threatening artists like me. He records it all. Leverage, he calls it. I called Hank immediately. How fast can you get into a hidden room and copy a laptop? Give me 30 minutes and a distraction. The pieces fell into place. I turned to Ryan. Want to help me destroy Jackson Reed? His hands were shaking, but his eyes were steel. Tell me what to do. An hour later, I walked into the gallery where I'd first met Jackson. He stood smugly beside his latest piece, Ryan's work, of course, with Chloe and Max nearby. Mommy. Max called, but Chloe held him back. The papers, Jackson demanded. I handed him the envelope. As he read, Hank's text arrived, got everything. Police are standing by. Something wrong? I asked sweetly as Jackson's face darkened. Oh right, those aren't divorce papers. That's a confession from Chloe. About Monica Winters. Chloe stepped forward, Max running to my arms. I'm done protecting you, Jackson. I found Monica's letters. I know what you did. Jackson lunged for the gallery's exit, only to find Ryan blocking his way, surrounded by police officers. You're nothing without me. Jackson snarled at Ryan. Ryan smiled sadly. No, Jackson. You were nothing without me. And now everyone will know it. As the officers led Jackson away, I held Max tightly, watching my ex-husband's perfect facade finally crack. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying someone. It's about revealing who they truly are. 1 year later, I stood in my gallery, not Thompson Hughes anymore, but True Colors, watching Ryan arrange his latest collection for tomorrow's opening. Max sat nearby, intensely focused on his own drawing, his tongue sticking out just like Ryan's did when he painted. What do you think? Ryan asked, stepping back from a massive canvas that seemed to pulse with energy. It's perfect, I replied, meaning more than just the painting. You ready for tomorrow? He smiled nervously. First solo show under my own name. Only took a decade. The headlines after Jackson's arrest had been explosive. Famous artist revealed as fraud. Jackson Reed's empire of lies. Missing woman's case reopened. The art world had reeled, then reformed. Ryan's truth had inspired others to come forward, revealing similar stories of exploitation and theft. My phone buzzed, a news alert. Jackson had been spotted in Buenos Aires. Some wealthy collectors were still buying his work, claiming the scandal made it more valuable. Part of me wanted to be angry about that, but I'd learned something important about revenge. Sometimes letting go is the better victory. Mommy, look. Max held up his drawing, a family portrait of the three of us, surrounded by splashes of bright color. No monsters this time. The gallery door chimed. Mia walked in with Chloe, both carrying coffee trays. After testifying against Jackson, Chloe had found her own path, starting a foundation for artists seeking legal protection from exploitation. The Times reporter is coming at 4, Mia reminded me. You sure you want to do this interview? I nodded, watching Ryan help Max mix colors for his drawing. People should know the whole story. Not just about Jackson's crimes, but about the art community's responsibility to protect its own. Speaking of protection, Chloe said quietly, Monica's sister called. They're finally getting closure, thanks to the evidence from Jackson's laptop. A bittersweet victory, but a victory nonetheless. I touched the gallery's window, where True Colors was painted in iridescent letters that shifted in the light. Below it, where authenticity meets art. Hey, Ryan called softly, noticing my reflection. You okay? Better than okay? I replied, turning back to my family. The real one, built on truth rather than illusion. Max ran up, proudly showing his finished drawing. In the corner, he'd written in careful letters, by Max Thompson Mercer. That's quite a signature, Ryan said, ruffling Max's hair. Well, Max declared with 6-year-old wisdom, Mommy says real artists sign their own work. I laughed, but felt tears prick my eyes. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying someone's lies. It's about building something true in their place. And sometimes, if you're lucky, you build something even more beautiful than you imagined.